You are listening to Influencers from the Conference Board.
Welcome to this episode of the Influencer podcast by the Conference Board. My name is JP Kuehlwein. I'm the leader of the Marketing Institute and the co-leader of the Communications Institute here at the Conference Board. And my guest today is Virginie Helias, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Procter Gamble. We'll be talking about how to balance corporate sustainability with reputation, branding, and the balance sheet, particularly at a large multinational, multi-category consumer packaged goods giant that is Procter Gamble. First of all, Virginie, thanks a lot for making some time to come over.
Thanks for having me.
You were stopping over here. I think you just talked at a conference at the
Absolutely, this morning, yes.
Future of Organization. To start us off, maybe, we know each other for a while. I know you didn't start in sustainability. I think it wasn't even a word when we both started at P&G. How did you get into it? Where did you come from and how did you get into it?
Yeah, so total serendipity, as it often is. 31 years now with P&G, 23 in marketing, brand building, innovation.
You started with 15, we should say, at the age of 15.
Well, close, yes. And so I actually joined P&G to do marketing. That's what I've been doing for the most part. And then, yes, we crossed each other, I believe, in the US, where after my 5 years in the US, came to Geneva. And then I actually did most of my time in marketing on fabric care. And it was the early years 2000, and I was leading the fabric care business for Europe, which is Ariel is the big brand. And Ariel was not doing well. It had been on a downward trend for 3 years. And so I had to find ideas to revitalize the business, so tested many ideas. And the one that got to the top was Ariel cleans so well, you can wash your clothes in low temperature, which was actually very topical because it was at the time where the prices of electricity were increasing big time. And so we could say, and if you turn to 30, you could actually see saving on your electricity bill. So it was an immediate hit, amazing commercial success. And then 2004 or 5, Al Gore launched his movie, The Inconvenient Truth, which started mainstreaming the concept of global warming. I'd never heard about it. I didn't know how to spell sustainability. But I said, oh, that's interesting. Took my whole team to watch the movie. And then I learned that the concept of life cycle assessment, which looks at the impact of a product category from raw material to disposal. And for detergent, 80% of the impact was the temperature of the washing machine. So this is where it clicked for me. Not only I had launched the best commercial initiative, but it was the best thing I could have done for the environment. And this is where I started to educate myself on this new concept, volunteer for some project. And at some point I said, well, I need to go a bit further. And so I took this training class in Lausanne, done by the WWF, One Planet Leader. And for a full week, I was surrounded by practitioners and professionals of sustainability. For me, it was still a hobby. But I realized during that week that was great to do it on the side, but if I could make it my job, the impact I could have on P&G would be much greater. So I committed at the end to the class, knowing I would never see those people again, that I would actually make sustainability my job. And so had no idea how I would do that. But 2 weeks after that training, flying to Cincinnati, asking to see the CEO, he gave me 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, I pitched for this new job, which was to be the bridge between the science of sustainability, which existed for P&G. Actually, P&G is one of the leaders on environmental science for many, many decades. But that was a department, a group of scientists, toxicologists, biologists with zero connection with the business. So I said, we need to bridge science and business. We need to embed sustainability into everything we do, innovation, brand building, culture. And that was my mission. And I said, and I want that job. And he said, okay. And from that, I started doing that.
I know it's not easy to convince P&G, which I usually compare to an oil tanker to my students, of changing direction. So how did you go about impacting what the larger corporation was doing, thinking, and acting on. It's one thing to have already activities like lower temperature detergents that can fit the sustainability story. It's another to take proactive steps and even make investments. How do you convince?
Yes. So I think this is the biggest thing, and the thing I'm the most proud of has been to really transform the company on this. It was really nowhere. It was, as I said, as a department, and over the past 8 years, it's now a business strategy. I must say I had lonely moments. That hasn't been easy all the time. I made the decision very early on that I couldn't convince everyone, and I would go for the 1%. The 1% of people who believed in it and who were ready to go and do it to learn. And so this is how it all started. A few relatively high senior people who believed in it, and we said, let's do it together and let's create success stories, because that's how it works. Success stories, and I'll give a few examples, but once you have that, then you play the usual trick of internal competition. We know how it works with P&G, scorecard and saying, you haven't done it. So, but really creating this, it can be done, and it can be an and, growing value and reducing the footprint. Then it has been a journey of convincing the top management, which was another series of tactics, the most effective of it being to bring the outside in. And so I created 3 years ago now an external advisory board with extremely influential thought leaders on the topic. And we spent 2 days a year with the C-suite, meeting chaired by the CEO, to basically be guided, challenged, and motivated by those advisors. So that has been really transformative.
You were talking about some big successes. If you can talk about some of them and tell us, for managers who are very number focused, you talked about store cuts. Yes. Everyone needs to deliver their profit. Yeah. Can you tell us also the financial aspect, or at least the metrics that can be used?
Yes. So let me tell you a story. I mean, that's the most illustrative. In 2017, we are in Davos for the first time. And we don't have major stories. We have a few things, but to be in Davos, you need to make sure that you have something that is really new and different. And so with my 1%, one of the 1%, the leader of the hair care business on Head and Shoulders, we decided it was just after the release of the report from the Helen MacArthur Foundation, that if we do business as usual, by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean, which is kind of fact that kind of stops you in your track. And that's what it did for her. And we brainstorm, and long story short, the first Head and Shoulders bottle made with plastic collected on the beaches of France. And nothing was figured out. I mean, the supply chain was not. I mean, we had a few elements. We had a great partner with TerraCycle, but lots of moving pieces. But we decided to make the commitment and announce it in Davos. After that, I mean, that was one of these big moments, because so before that announcement, many marketers were skeptics. I mean, marketing in all companies is the most difficult stronghold on sustainability. They've learned a different way. They don't want to change, and they question everything, the business case of it. So before that moment, it was, okay, I don't want to do it. Show me the business case for it. Show me the business case, which is probably the sentence I most hate, because what's the alternative business case? Show it to me, but show me the business case. Okay. After Davos and the Head and Shoulders, nobody was asking for the business case anymore. This project didn't make any sense financially, because it was 40 times more expensive to collect plastic from the beach and process them and clean them and put them into a bottle. But it was such a great brand idea, And so it was what we call now making sustainability irresistible. And what was great is that because we took a bit of a leap of faith and leaned forward, what I call the collateral good in terms of financial was amazing. It was actually one of the best ROI initiative because we got amazing support in store, big merchandising, free PR, we could not even buy it, And so that was, and so this collateral good, and when you go and you see all this unintended positive consequence that actually make the project financially very viable. So don't wait for the sustainability to be affordable. Work on it with all your creativity to make it affordable. I mean, like it was the case for the Head and Shoulders bottle.
It reminds me of Pampers working with the UN on neonatal tetanus,
yes.
and the enormous support by retailers behind that as well.
Totally, UNICEF.
So retailers are behind you in that. And I just, if this is correct, I just got picked up news here that you found a way to recycle polypropylene plastic, which seems to be a challenge because it takes on the odor, etc.
That's the kind of story, because it was a P&D scientist who came up with this amazing idea, which is now revolutionizing the recycling industry. Because recycled polypropylene is usually very dark, and the only thing you can do with it is like heavy duty things. Yes. Right. So through a chemical recycling process, now it's turned back into a virgin-like state, remove the odor and the contaminant and the color, and can be used back totally in a circular fashion. We have it's open source now, so everybody can use it. Building a plant in Ohio, so it's pure cycle technology, but the technology and the plant production is sold out for the next 20 years. I mean, showing that there is really a need there.
No, this is a corporate project. Do you work then with corporate communications as kind of your marketing department to valorize that, or
yes.
Do you always try to find brands that tag on to these things?
You know P&G well. Priority is always brands, and I'm really pushing the businesses to everything we do, every innovation that the priority is to show up, through the brands. But sometimes, in addition, not replacement, but there are some initiatives that are really corporate. I mean, one example is the Alliance to End Plastic Waste that we just, P&G is a founding member. Our CEO is the chair of this Alliance to End Plastic Waste. This is obviously totally category agnostic. It works for all our brands, and we have a specific corporate communication on this.
Right. Now, it's not always easy. With increased commitment and publicity, you get increased scrutiny, I'm sure. And there's another story I picked out just yesterday, which was about the 2020 deforestation goals that it was reported P&G, but also Nestle, etc., said they were going to miss. How is the reaction then in the company? Is it, well, we need to make more effort, or do people say, well, see, it's a bit risky to do sustainability?
So that's an interesting one. So on this one, it was misrepresentation of the information that we shared. Our commitment on palm oil, I mean, we are meeting them. They are to what we requested from all our suppliers to submit their policies to make sure there were no deforestation. We are 100% palm oil. Our SPO, our wood pulp are also 100% third-party certified. Now, the thing is, there is still deforestation going on. And so what this says is that the standards that exist today are not sufficient. And we are actively working to raise those standards, and especially to invest in third-party verification, because that's the verification is then having alerts when something's happening and be able to react immediately. So you're right. It's actually for P&G, which has a culture of, kind of IP obsessed and innovation. This is very uncomfortable, because we are now sharing things that we would not. And the more you share, as you say, more scrutiny. And I'm really pushing sharing and committing externally, because then it reinforces the internal commitment. But the more visible you get, and because we are so big, obviously, we are being leveraged by NGOs as a way to raise the bar for everyone, which is fair game.
Right. If I look at it as a marketer, and I have lots of discussions along these lines with students in business schools, it's one thing, for example, to have a beauty product to say, I now have all natural ingredients, I have absence of silicones, etc. I might have body wash that has no micro beads, so that's good. But at the same time, the brand wants the bottle to look good, a nice design, adds metallicized plastic, maybe multi-laminate, and puts it in a big jar. So there is this natural product, quote unquote, in the big non-recyclable jar. How are we going to resolve this? Is it really, well, the consumer asked for it, so I'll do it? Or are you trying to even push and educate the consumer to maybe demand less of non-recyclable packaging or products that are harmful for the environment?
Well, I would say that today it's more the consumers educating us, because and you're generally not successful at educating consumers. What we want to do is to develop irresistible solutions that create a pool so that people actually go to the most sustainable. That was the case with Head & Shoulders, the case with many other initiatives like the Loop. You probably have heard of the Loop. It's how do you make it irresistible so that even if you are not environmental conscious, you want that thing, But to your question, no, we don't want a sustainable product in an unsustainable packaging. It doesn't make any sense. So this is why we are hiring very smart people to find the end. You need to be able, and there is lots of innovation and technology, and we get all our suppliers. Next week we have all our suppliers coming to Cincinnati on sustainability, and we want their creativity and their solution so that it looks great, but it is also at the same time sustainable.
Right. It comes at a cost. By the way, we have another podcast with Tom Zaki where we talk about Loop and we talk about TerraCycle, so you can look that up in our podcast library. I also had another interview with a German frozen food manufacturer, Froster, who moved from, if you like, chemical food or at least engineered food to all natural food. And the long story short was in the first 2 years, they lost almost 60% of their business because surprisingly, even the so-called green German population that wants to do everything for the environment was not willing to pay 30 cents, €1 more for their frozen meals. How do you balance this, particularly when you're on a brand level and every cent seems to count?
Yeah, it's not easy. If it was, we would not have a podcast on it. It is not easy. It's the work of innovation. I mean, really innovation is the way to break that dilemma. Because today, indeed, even, recycled plastic is more expensive than virgin, which doesn't make much sense, With the demand creation, it will hopefully come to a place where, we can have it at scale. But indeed, at the beginning, so you need to balance it, and we can't have beach plastic on all our products, and so we need the creativity. So you use it as a way to create awareness with people. But at scale, you use normal post-consumer recycled plastic. So it's a balancing act. But what I've seen over and over is that, again, if you wait for it to be affordable, you've waited too long. And, people are already there. So, and if you go, then you create the demand and people come to you, innovators and startups, they come to you with solution. That's really the place we want to be.
Are actually premium brands or even more purpose-driven brands that you can have or can launch a way in? Because there it seems consumers might be willing to actually pay a premium for a purpose and a dedication to a higher purpose.
Yeah, and yes, you're right. And the other thing is I'm pushing the brands to, on sustainability, there is a thing that is you need to do everything. It's not, which is really uncomfortable as well, because we are, we learn that we need to prioritize all the time. Well, the problem is on sustainability, you can't have whole, you can't decide that you will work on the circular economy and then you have a problem in your supply chain. As a brand, it's not possible, but you need to decide your point of difference and your point of parity, where. This is a value creation thing. This is why we are reinventing actually the way we build our brands. We call it Brand 2030. It's about, and we take our 20 leadership brands through it, which is what is the social or environmental commitment that will be measurable long-term for your brand, totally linked to your equity, and that you will bring to life with tangible acts. On those things, you need to make sure that you invest. That's your point of difference. One example of those ambition, we call it brand-specific ambition, herbal essence, a shampoo, natural shampoo. Their ambition is to enable everyone to experience the positive power of nature and protect biodiversity. You would say, protect biodiversity, how a brand can do that? Well, that's also what I'm asking them. How are you going to be credible and authentic on that? Well, they have just done a major partnership with Kew Royal Botanical Garden, the global authority on plants, and they are developing new ingredients, sustainable sourcing. This is really a step into protecting biodiversity. So we go for each of the brands for this process. What are your PODs? What is your ambition, long-term, measurable, linked to your equity?
So it's not just a corporate drive. Every brand can differentiate according to their core equities.
Absolutely.
So a Herbal Essence can go for plants and preserving plants, and maybe a Pampers can go for something else.
Totally. But that's as a point of difference. They're pushing that to create value. But underneath, we call the fundamentals. Everyone has to do the fundamentals, which is 100% recyclable packaging and so on and so forth.
Now, in the fundamentals, you talk a lot about partners now. We talked about TerraCycle. You talked about NGOs that you learn from. You talk about the consumer. He informs you rather than you, the consumer. Is it a new era of needing to work even with governments and regulators beyond all the NGOs? And how do you adapt to working with all these external partners?
That's a great question. It's one of my fights because I believe that we've reached a limit in terms of what a company can do on their own. I mean, we've done all the low-hanging fruit. And if we now really want to drive impact at scale, it has to be through collaboration. And it is really, really, really hard. It's not in our genes. Competition is in our genes. Collaboration is not. And so, we have to work with the cross-value chain partnership is one that are really, really powerful. And the Alliance to End Plastic Waste is one of them. So we have, people who make the plastic, the oil company, people who use the plastic, that's us, who transform the plastic and process the plastic, and all the value chain is there. And this is the only way now to really make an impact at scale. Government, obviously, environmental policies are critical. I mean, we want them. They're helpful if they don't prevent us from innovating, but they are generally very helpful. Many of them, circular economy in Europe, for instance, we are partnering with them. NGO, TerraCycle, but we have many of them. Actually, when a brand decide their ambition, 99% of the case, they can't achieve this ambition alone, So they have to define what are the strategic partnerships that they are going to do. Mm. It's like super exciting. It's a new era of marketing. It's also very uncomfortable, but that's the way to go.
And Tom Zaki told us, because I said when he was in Davos, after the talk, he had all the CEOs stand around him, Unilever, Procter Gamble, SC Johnson, et cetera. And I said, how do you deal working with all these competitors? And he says, I love it because we want them to outdo each other in doing even better than competition. Is that something you embrace as well? How do you look, over your shoulder at Unilever or SC Johnson or Clorox or others? Do you get inspired by each other? Is there potentially even some help in ideas or execution, or is that still a total no-no?
I would lie if I would say it's easy to work with our direct competitor. Generally, what we do is on all this collaboration, we have a core team, and on the core team, you don't have direct competitor, and then we extend it. We'll learn to work directly, but it's a learning process. And but what is clear is that there is stimulation. There is a race to the top now that you see. It's like quite amazing. Even those so-called pre-competitive partnerships are becoming competitive. It's the one who will launch their own alliance and coalition on things. But that's great. It's for the greater good, right? So learning process. We have to work together. There are instances where we've been working in trade association and this. We've been working, but here it's something different. It touches innovation and it's very close, but it's like very, very exciting. And yes, we get inspired by each other, and we learn together and we make progress together.
Fantastic. We're running out of time already, but I have 3 more quick questions that I wanted to ask you. The first one is what's your vision? What's going to be different, or what might happen, or how do we know you were successful in 10 years from now?
Yeah, well, 10 years is perfect because it's my ambition 2030. So I know exactly what success will look like. The goals are available. Those are my metrics. But the most exciting for me with my background is to say that 100% of our brands will enable and inspire responsible consumption. We chose the responsible consumption because it's the language of the SDGs. It means, sustainability all over. And re-engineering the way we build our brands to get there, for me, it's the most exciting. So really the brands, imagine all P&G brands having a very credible, authentic and ambitious social environmental commitment that they bring to life across all their marketing and innovation activities. That will be just amazing.
Excellent. The second question is, do you have a favorite person, company, brand that you take as an inspiration in this
Yeah, it's funny. When I
effort?
started the journey, I had my toolbox of things to inspire the leaders, and all the examples were external examples. What's great now is that I have many internal. But among those external examples, so I had, had Tesla because I wanted to say, how do you make sustainability irresistible? They do it in a great way. I had the Flyknit from Nike, which is those shoes that were not designed originally to be more sustainable, just to be lighter, but with a thread as a result there, which is very often what we see. It can be a good consequence of
which
things.
is the P&G way. You try to link superior performance with sustainability.
Absolutely. This is not the only way now, but it's a key one, you're right. And then IKEA, which I really like IKEA because I used to tell people, you want to do what sustainable lifestyle is, open an IKEA catalog, I started recycling because IKEA provided those amazingly nice recycling boxes, and so again, creating that pool, making sustainability irresistible, and those companies are doing it very well.
Excellent. And finally, it seemed you already indicated there is a site or a place at png.com, I imagine.
pg.com, so we have our downloadable citizenship report. So citizenship is the broader agenda, which has sustainability, social impact, diversity, but that's within that. We are launching the next one in a couple of weeks. And then the Ambition 2030 brochure, which has very specific goals and metrics that we are working on and will deliver by 2030.
Well, excellent. Wonderful. Well, Virginie, thanks again so much for taking the time. I think this was absolutely fascinating. And to you, dear listener, for taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed this episode, then please rate, subscribe, tell everyone about it. And look up our other podcasts at www.conference-dashboard.org/podcast. And with that, I say goodbye, tschüss, auf Wiedersehen, and hope you listen in next time. Bye-bye.
This has been Influencers from the Conference Board.